conversation with On Target Simulations, the lovely developers that have worked on the Flashpoint Campaigns series of games, right? I think I can use that term.
Yep.
So speaking of, right, tell us a little bit about just in general the history of the game series. Like, when did you all get involved in with OTS, and you know, what had been your relationship with Matrix Games and Slithering and so forth. So I'll give the floor to whoever wants to take that one.
That's Rob to start with.
I'll go first then. Thank you. It's been a long time. The original genesis of the whole concept was a training aid for the Canadian Armed Forces back in the 70s, 1970s. And
Wow.
they approached Simulations Canada, which did board games and then computer games in Nova Scotia, to create this training aid. And they then sold it as a commercial game, and I saw it. And the purpose of the training game was not to teach tactics or anything else. It was to take down cocky, overconfident young lieutenants and captains who thought they knew it all and they were the modern day Napoleons, and explain just how chaotic and confusing a modern battlefield can be. And so basically it was like blind man's bluff. And you would get text fragmentary reports. Oh, there's been firing heard from this direction, and then it gets cut off. Or we think there's a cloud of smoke over in that direction. And the game shipped with a laminated map and a bunch of grease pencils, China pencils. And you would mark this onto the map and try and deduce what was happening. That was the game. So
my next question is, does that game still exist, and where can I copy it? Because I love that concept. Well, even if there was like a fully modernized version of that would be... Sorry, go ahead.
It was all about the imagination in your head and forming a picture of the battlefield. And it was as confusing as hell and didn't sell. Quite properly. Yeah. There was no terrain effects chart. There was no combat results table. There was nothing to help the players. And Matrix took over the Simulations Canada game catalog in like 2002. And I put some games out, some simple text-based games out through SimCan. And so I called the president of Matrix at the time. I said, hey, what's going on? You said you had taken over these games and you're going to redevelop them and get them out of the text world and into the graphics world. He said, yeah, we are. You want to do one? I said, sure. He said, oh, I have your choice of titles. Like, here's a whole bunch. And he sent me the source code for like 12 games. And I picked the one that had been done the least, which was this one. It was called Main Battle Tank. I said, I will redevelop Main Battle Tank. How hard can that be? I've got the source for the original game. And that was 2002. About 2005, Flashpoint Germany came out, and it was nothing like the Main Battle Tank.
Right.
The world had moved on. The standards had increased. And I've been working on it ever since. And Jim, when did we meet? Because you were the first.
That was Origins of I think 05.
05, 06, I think. Yeah, 06, because it came out in like February of 2005. And Matrix Games had these amazing online forums. And so you could meet kindred spirits all across the world, and it's as if you're in the same room together. And everybody that's gotten involved with the project since, we've met through these forums. And kind of one thing led to another, and we just kept saying, oh, we could do better, and redeveloped again. And especially after Red Storm came out, which was 2008 now. No, couldn't have been. 2013, I'm sorry. We really had a lot of interest, and some very smart guys started participating in the forums, and we signed them up. They're key members now. The AI is done by a guy we met in the forum who's asking very specific questions about map colors and how do you do this? How do you do that? And yeah, it just mushroomed from there. We've had a very stable team. We work really hard and we give everybody lots of creative room, so that when you play the game, it just keeps going. From I'd like to say from strength to strength, but the reports are really good, and the map graphics are really good, and the doctrine, is good, and the data is good. All kinds of stuff gives a very even, consistent feel to it. It's because we have 6 guys working really hard, putting all that time in and getting it done.
It sounds like you found people who had a joy, or at least somewhat of a passion in each of those little areas. That's a very interesting way to develop a development team. So I applaud that. That's an interesting way to approach it over time like that.
Yeah, sounds very familiar from the board game community, so to say. A little bit background there, so I feel often happens in that, and of course the sort of there's a very board gamey feel to your game as well.
Let me just move the camera
and take that as a compliment, because what I get from it is I'm mostly a miniatures wargamer in my background, and I'm just starting to kind of traipse in my old age towards tweezers and counting and clipping, but no clipping, but not yet. It's the ease of the interface, I think, for me. For both games, I came in on Red Storm not too long ago, maybe about a half a year ago, actually, honestly. And for me, it was the approachability of the game. Some of that, of course, is in its operational scale, but especially with Red Storm. Red Storm was a little. I like the fact that I had Red Storm first, because it's not necessarily a simpler interface. It's just a little bit more a single flow, but there's not nearly as much information available, right? So I felt like Red Storm for me was a great training ground to then jump right into Southern Storm. I don't know what your feelings are on that.
One of the design goals. We wanted an accessible war game with Flashpoint Germany and then Red Storm. Matrix said, make us an accessible war game. You might, well, I guess you wouldn't recall, but back in those days, a lot of them had a really steep learning curve. And it was very hard to buy a new game by an amateur designer and sit down and get going on it within a few weeks even. And then we have a guy on our team, Charles, and his job basically is to say, slow down, guys, you're over-engineering this, you're going too far, you're ruining the user experience. Or not ruining, but we want to keep it simple and focused and accessible. And okay, add in all these reports, but don't make them mandatory.
That's exactly.
Keep the essence of the gameplay going and uncluttered and just moving along. And that's a full-time job.
From my perspective, that's how I would describe the major difference between the two, right? There's some functional differences, and maybe we can hit some of those functional differences as we kind of start walking through a scenario here. And I would like to, if you know of exact differences between the two, I'd love to hear it as we walk through. Yeah, I found that primarily it's the amount of information that you can get and how you get to it, and potentially how you can use it. And then, especially, I think me and Jan were talking right before this, that the standard operational procedure adjustments, I think that was key, because with all this extra information, it doesn't matter if you have all this extra information if you can't do something somewhat unique with that information, right? So it's just you pulled the levers, I think, well, right? You pulled the levers appropriately as you made that change to giving more information. So
thank you.
Give the floor. Is there anything looking back in particular with this latest production that you would have done any differently? I always like
that's something all three of us might want to address. But for my part, I would not. If I could change everything, I wouldn't go 9 years between releases. I'd go 3 or 4 years between releases.
Well, that leads to a good question. Why did you wait? Was it? Well, I'll just say that. Why the long time between?
Matrix is a marvelous publisher. Their mantra is don't ship it if it's not done. And we just weren't done. We still have a lengthy list of things we'd like to put in. But yeah, the core things to kind of, okay, if we're going to treat this with this much detail, then here are the other things we have to do. It just took time. And you has to play test it, you have to revise it, you have to change the play testing, all the test plans. There's just a host of things that drag you along and slow you down, and just a bit of a ball and chain. But if you keep at it, just day in, day out, you can get it. And it just took 9 years before we said, okay, this is releasable. We can ship this.
Go ahead. Didn't know somebody else was talking. Was there any particular part of the code base, without getting too developery, was there any particular thing that you felt like we have to rip this out and redo it? Like, was there any significant portion of the code base that you had to redo from scratch without giving away any?
No, every single thing.
Really? Okay.
I don't think there's more than 5% Red Storm code left in the game at this point.
That was going to be one of my questions. I didn't want to force you to answer that, but I think that's significant, because I think the user can feel that, at least, right? It does not feel like a repaint. It's not a repaint. I honestly
Jim,
think
you might speak to this, because you're the one that kept goading us to keep tearing things out and redoing them.
Well, and yeah, there was a lot of changes, and so significant is Red Storm was in 16-bit world. Oh, sorry, 32-bit world, and now we've got the 64-bit engine underneath to allow us to handle more information, larger maps. Because if you try to play the folder map that somebody put together for Red Storm,
right,
it's like almost a division level thing. Huge map, lots of units. It can kill the game at certain points if too many markers and things get on the map. You have to save your game, exit, and come back in, because you just blow out the handles that the game can utilize. And to Rob's point, we've basically rebuilt all the major areas of code. That's combat routines, which we're still working, and Jeff can talk to some of that once we get into game. Spotting, sensors, a lot of stuff that I'm sure we'll talk to in the game has changed from Red Storm. Red Storm, it was a single unit and it could spot something and shoot at it. Now we're looking at every subunit, and we're looking at the sensors on every subunit, and then each subunit may shoot at an enemy subunit that it spots. It's not an automatic everybody sees everybody world now, and all the sensors can be different, and so everything has gotten touched, rebuilt, more detailed, and then worked into the UI, which had to be rewritten. And Rob fell out of his chair. He'll be back.
Yeah, no.
The camera went down.
But part of it too was, as we were going along and reinventing things, various models and mechanisms and whatnot, and we made a big effort to take some of the things that were aggregated and abstracted and simplified in Red Storm and make them more concrete and player controllable. And one of our mantras is, whatever a human player can do, we want the computer player to be similarly equipped. And that, a lot of times, was a huge effort to do that, to automate lots of behavior that, reasonable behavior, not perfect, but reasonable, that a human could do. And, how do you do that, with a rules-based, AI player? And it's a lot of work.
So one of my first questions then, let's go ahead and just start dropping into what we were going to do here. I can't remember what we decided.
You said The Great Escape.
Yeah. So just kind of show everybody a significant amount of scenarios included in the game. We are going to do a computer opponent, Warsaw Pack. So tell me a little bit about these planning options. How much?
So yeah, this is like a really significant departure from Red Storm. So the Red Storm engine, basically, we have an OODA loop that runs for the AI player, and then the AI player will then generate courses of action, rank them, and then launch. Okay, and it will do this at several points during the game. It'll reassess, and that's why when you played Red Storm, it didn't always play the same way. Replaying the same scenario didn't always play the same way, because when the computer player generates its courses of action, it's looking at what it knows. Okay, and it only knows what its units have spotted. Okay,
Right.
and so then that starts to really give you great replayability, because it'll start to surprise you. You're running your same plan, and the computer play is doing it different, and you don't really know why, other than the fact that there are combat outcomes and discoveries for spotting and stuff that are different in each run, and that's taken into account.
So what is included in one of these very specific ones? So
So basically, the way a battle plan works is, instead of the computer force just being a gigantic bucket of units, which is what it was in Red Storm, it's now divided into smaller buckets, and the scenario designer can do that. And so each one of those buckets of units, typically, you do it on a unit boundary of some kind, whether it's companies or companies or battalions or whatever. And then, so those are the force packages that are available for course of action planning. Okay. Now, the other thing is, what a battle plan then is, actually, it's a course of action designed by the scenario designer. Okay. And so in Red Storm, basically, the two main determinants of courses of action were, what's the cost in terms of time and distance, what's the reward in terms of victory points, and what's the risk in terms of known enemy units. Okay, and so then it would kind of stick to the road beds, because you move faster that way, right? And once you played Red Storm enough, you could get a feel for, how do I fool the AI? How can I push the AI around on the map? And you could actually, it's one of the things that got me into the team, was like, I really enjoyed it, because I figured that out as a player and started doing that. Okay, so but the thing was, it was very predictable. Like, okay, so if you look at the maneuverability, they're coming down the road. They're not driving down the road. It's the fact that you build roads where the terrain is flattest, and therefore, even if you're not on the road, it's faster movement, right? It just kind of looks like it's what we used to call IFR, land navigation. I follow roads, right? It's not really that. It's the terrain that's conducive to roads is conducive to off-road movement too. So so it's hard to put the planning in the course of action generator to actually do maneuver. Okay, and so that we felt that the shortest distance to get to that was to have the scenario designer come up with courses of action.
That's brilliant. And you had me at Uda.
Yeah. Uda is still there. We still run that loop back in there. It's just got more information. And as Jeff was pointing out, so the simple answer for the battle plans is, it gives you the ability, if you've got an objective on the map, and okay, we're going to go take this bridgehead, you can give the AI, well, let's attack it from the north, let's attack it from the south, let's attack it central, and take all those force package pieces and give them, initial direction. And then once they're, on that initial path, then that Red Storm background logic kicks in. What do I know? What do I see? Where are my victory point objectives? And so think of it as kind of hanging a wire, and then the Red Storm AI is a spring that's attached to that wire. So the forces will move along that path and react, but you're not using the breadcrumb method of VPs like Red Storm. You get a much more realistic layout of battle.
And let me add to that just a little bit. So one of the techniques that I like to use when I build a scenario is, I use the battle plans to shape what the battlefield looks like. All right, I set up a particular geometry of forces, and then I don't order assaults in the course of action, right, in the battle plan. I put them in place, and then, like Jim said, turn it over to the old school course of action generator that's going to look at the common operating picture. It's going to look at, what does it know, and where are the valuable things to grab, and then from there start maneuvering stuff around. But the virtue of having the force packages gives a little more coherence, and you don't see a company from this battalion and a company from that battalion being put together on the fly. That doesn't happen. It'll always be the force package, which would normally be, some military formation, remains cohesive and is used as humans would use it.
So now we're jumping into this scenario. This is the Great Escape, and we're doing it from the East German perspective here. One thing you'll notice is there's a lot of hyperlinks in the welcome to the scenario. You can get to all these things. I'm not going to click through here yet. I'm probably going to show them how to get there from the menus. But a great amount of information just right off the bat. For anybody who's never played, you have the command cycle, which is a key element of it. And I honestly would like to know a little bit more about how this is computed and what affects it. And I think the users probably would as well, because I think that's a key element to your ability to control the situation over time, especially in a multiplayer game. And then you can get to basically all the information that's being shown here. You can get to pretty much from over here, which is a great little mechanism as well. Let me get through this. I love this is very much improved too. It might be a simple thing, but I think the formatting of this is beautiful. Myself, I hadn't been using the spotlight mechanism very often, and I finally dragged it out and looked at it a little bit closer in my most recent playing of the game, and I really like this. The nicety of this is that it's the highlighted units are available on the map now, and the assumption is that the non-highlighted ones are reinforcements that are due to come on. And what's kind of nice is I just figured this out yesterday. I'm not a good manual reader. I'm just finally finishing the manual. So I like to approach games from an intuitive perspective. Like, can I play this game without reading the manual? And I absolutely did, but I'm finding out really nice things just by literally playing it, but also reading the manual. Hard to get them. But this is beautiful. I don't think there was the equivalent in Red Storm you might be able to see that information, but it was not quite as easy to navigate and so forth. Anything y'all want to talk about or point out in some of these in this core floating panels that I haven't really touched upon?
Well, as you kind of noted, when you at the top right there, you do have kind of the loop, the command cycle, and that's you're going to play that amount of time and then go into your planning cycle, and it's the same for the AI. So in this case, in 21 minutes, the U.S. is going to replan based on what it knows, and right now we're at 19, so we're actually inside the U.S. timing. Another nice piece there is that weather piece. In Red Storm, the weather was a weighted percentage model, so things could change on the fly. Weather in this game, thanks to William's work, is we have real world weather data. The scenario designer can pick days and weather setups. If you go in, I think it's the Intel panel, you can see the weather report for the day. So you know that, it could be raining in an hour. You actually get a forecast. It's realistic. The wind speeds, the illumination levels, everything that's there. And we'll see it in this one because the sun starts going down around 2013 in this scenario. You see the map color change. You see that window color change as it transitions into dusk and night. Nice little touches that kind of immerse you into it. The F10, the spotlight panel, multifunctional. So if you hit F10, you can get it to show you information about a specific unit that's on the map that you've got highlighted. If you got real estate, like in your case, if you click it again, it goes into the split panel mode. Whoops, or should. I don't know where it went. But or maybe you have to hit Shift F10. That might have been my bad. I may have just
back. Let's see. Oop, that's
I think it's Shift F10.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me try to
splitting it.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what? I didn't know how to do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so like in your case, if it's over on the right side on a small screen, generally you can't split it.
There.
But if you're in multiple screens, so now you can see both your order of battle and the unit. And there's a little menu icon underneath. So if it's an off-map unit, you can open up the orders to do your artillery, things like that. So it's a nice little tool. It gives the capability of what was in Red Storm, where we had the detailed information coupled with that order of battle tree. So
This
it's
is
a
nice
nice.
too. I didn't even. I'm learning new things as we play.
Yeah, you always will. That's the beauty. There's a lot of stuff in this game.
Yeah. You can always get to it, and it's always intuitive after you know how to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Like anything.
And that's where that pesky, manual comes in. Because
and that's why I'm reading it fully now, and I'll probably read it again several times.
And it's stuff I'm working on, and we're going to have a revision 2 of the ops guide here, and with the next update, because a number of new things have been added and changed. So we're trying to keep living documentation going, so that helps.
This was beautiful because I couldn't figure out. I was like, the manual was referencing this, and I was like, how do you get to that? So you just fixed that for me. So thank you very much.
I'll have to go check the manual, make sure that's clear. But yeah, so tons of information, and that's the biggest difference from Red Storm to here, is basically all those tabs where you can look at ops and intel and the logistics and your fire support, all that additional information, what it is, when it's available, and in some instances what it can do and when. So lots of good toys here.
So we can siphon this off into a topic of its own, but I definitely would like to know more about how this is computed and how we can affect it as players, but we don't need to necessarily get into that right this second unless you'd rather.
Well, I could jump in on that.
Yeah, go get it, Rob.
The starting point, and the numbers have been like 21 minutes for the green and 19 for red. The starting point is how big the forces that you're commanding overall, whereas smaller forces are more nimble and have a shorter cycle. So somewhere in the spreadsheets, there's a number. So, if you're commanding a Soviet regiment, it's X, and if it's an American battalion, it's Y, on general principles. We then assume that the ratio of headquarter troops to line troops, or non-headquarters, in peacetime is the optimal balance. And if headquarters troops take relatively more casualties, the ratio drops and the length of time it takes to command lengthens. It takes longer if your HQ's got all shut up. And then the other characteristics are actually right on the screen. If you go over to the leader box, what has the flags, you see the last 3 values are EW comms, electronic warfare value, how readily you recover readiness, and average readiness. The rest of the change in the OODA loops is tied directly to those. And what that means is that if you drive your forces mercilessly and take a lot of casualties, your readiness will plummet and your OODA loop will lengthen out. And so you've got a dilemma. You start to lose control of your forces if you push them too hard, too fast. And if you rest your forces, just stop and give them resupply orders, the readiness will shoot up and your OODA loop will shorten again, back down to what it was. So there's this critical command dilemma. I could give a lot of orders. I can micromanage everything. Everybody's constantly moving to have just the perfect hex to sit in, and they're run flat. And then it takes an hour for you to give orders again.
Yeah.
Or you can just kind of follow along, do the
I don't think
really
any other
the
game
proper viewpoint. Yeah, like you're the commander. You're not positioning individual, tank platoons. You're the boss, and you got to think like a boss, and that punishes you if you don't.
My assumption is that the electronic warfare comms interference, is that just an aggregate or concatenation of the effective EW rating of units that are currently on the map within certain ranges, or what? How is this?
It's a map-wide environmental thing,
and it's not the only way to affect that.
Nothing you can do.
Okay, thank you for that.
It's like weather, like it rains everywhere, and you can't make it go away.
I was
gonna say it's way above your pay scale for what you're representing here. It just happens. Yeah.
Okay. That's where that was one small little missing link that I had as to whether or not I was doing enough to affect that. Really was my ultimate question. Yeah. Okay. And then readiness, of course, you touched upon it, but what are all of the factors that combine at a unit level for its readiness? It's how far it's moved, how much combat it's been in, how many enemy units it actually sees? Does that come into play as well?
No.
Okay.
Well, some movement affects readiness. If you're in combat, affects readiness. Also, losses and kills can minus and plus your morale for these
Okay.
units.
Mm.
To Jeff's point on the note, there certain things aren't readiness impacting. Like if I see 100 units out there, that doesn't affect my readiness.
Okay.
Now, if I start shooting or they shoot at me, well, then yeah, things start to go.
Okay.
And then that stuff does aggregate up to how well the unit is performing, the headquarters. If the headquarters gets shot up, its readiness drops. Now you're looking at a potential global drop in your average readiness. Your command cycle grows. When you get those reports of, hey, we've located a high headquarters, and you can put some artillery on it or an airstrike on it, that degrades the enemy's performance because you're killing off HQ elements, and affects their readiness. Does the ratio difference that Rob was talking about, and forces that command cycle to grow.
Speaking of the command branching, I think your chain of command branching is probably one of the best I've seen in any game. It's I don't know what it is about it. It's just very nice, very nicely done. It's very clear as to as you're clicking on things, how it's shown.
Yeah, if you're on a high headquarters, it'll break down to its subordinates.
Oh yeah.
If you click a subordinate, it goes up to its headquarters. It gives you command range for the headquarters units you click on.
Right. Does it also, like for example, if this unit was way away, does it also? I haven't looked, but does it change that color at all that you're out?
Well, the solid line means you're in command. The dash line here, because it's a recon asset, it doesn't care how far away it is from its command.
Hit the other headquarters.
Hit the other headquarters. Yeah, for the tank unit.
Northwest. There you go.
This one.
Yeah. No. The one that has the H in the upper
on
that
it.
one.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, H right there.
Yeah, so he's all solid bar to his tanks and his supporting. And that's one where if they get outside of command radius, you run into problems. And I think it changes to a small dotted line if he gets out of range.
So speaking of, let's just, we're not doing this for any tactical purposes whatsoever, but maybe just because I have none, so that's fine. But as far as readiness though, occasionally or as time permits, pulling units back a little bit more in reserve and giving them a rest and resupply will increase their average readiness, which will then aggregate into.
Well, if you look on the left into your spotlight panel for that tank unit, he's currently 100% ready, 90 morale, and 100% of his ammo load. So as he moves or does things, his readiness will drop. So you're right. So at some point, if you got to a place and you've got a break in the action before you're, say, going to assault or move forward, give them some time to recover that, and it'll go up. Readiness, morale, training all impact fighting capability. So if your numbers are high, you're doing great. If they start to drop, you're not as accurate. So that's all the soft factor stuff's in there. Yeah, it's a veteran tank company. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Appropriate use of recon, which I'm still learning as Jan's figuring out in our multiplayer game. Let's see. Let's just kind of move these guys. So
first of all, you want to talk about appropriate use of reconnaissance forces by the Warsaw Pact?
Sure.
Or by the West, because they're different.
Let's see. Let's talk a little bit just about movement in general. These are your three different movement types. This is what you're going to do if you don't move, or what you will do at the end of your move, correct? Right. And I think I was just reading that if you don't let them finish their order, you're increasing their time to be able to react to any further orders later, correct? Like, so in other words, if I was to move hasty and move him here, and while they're executing that order, try to give them a different order, then it does affect them considerably, right?
It does, because when you give essentially a string of orders. You give a movement order with a bunch of waypoints, and then you can go in and you can say, well, at waypoint 1, I want you to change from hasty movement to deliberate movement, right? Get more tactical. There's a lot less delay to implement that, because it's like you've already told them what you want them to do when they get to that point. When you say you change your mind and they're in the middle of moving to some place, you go, no, I want to go over here. That's an entirely new order. Okay. And so one of the mechanisms we have is an order delay, and that has to do with things like, what kind of shape is your headquarters in? What are you transitioning from and to? That's probably the biggest impact is going from a move hasty to a hold. Well, that's one thing. Going from hold to move hasty is another, and preparing to do an assault is another one. So and there's different transition times to go from one order set to another, and they vary.
So
but
it's most efficient.
But regardless, if you have to change it midstream, it's the same as if you were in, it's like a brand new order. So yeah, they'll stop for several minutes while they figure out what they got to do. Okay, what route are we going now? Get all the troops together and brief them, and then move out.
So I'm trying to show them as much as I can about the action of making a move. So I did a move hasty, set waypoints. I'm assuming, is there anything involved with giving them too many waypoints? Does that somehow is keeping the movement simpler, more efficient, or anything to that degree? Or are you basically just guiding the AI to choose similar to what you just did? You know what I mean?
Well, the waypoints, it's going to hit the waypoints, right? I mean, you're saying you have to go to this place.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. And you see there's paths on there right now. You'll see some of them are kind of curvy because they follow the road. Some of them are straight line, straight cross country. At the time, like say that unit moves from where it's at to waypoint 1, then it gets to waypoint 1 and it gets ready to move to waypoint 2. It's going to redo its path, right? And so if the situation has changed, now there's a bunch of craters somewhere, and it's faster to go around the craters than go through them, then it's going to path itself around the craters that weren't there when you gave the order. So it's kind of you got to be careful about trying to really optimize the paths and move individual units around, because what you're ordering may not come to fruition at all. Because at the time that they hit, the only thing you can count on is that they're going to drive that waypoint.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the rec attributes of this unit and how that plays in? I'm assuming it's less visible to the enemy as well. They're taking paths to make themselves slightly less visible, etc. Or is there just a certain point where obviously reality and physics come in, and there's just a certain minimum viable range, if you will, they're going to be spotted, right?
Well, the spotting, and I wish William was here. He could talk this a little bit better than I could. But the spotting is largely driven by things like cover and concealment of where they're at when spotting checks are made. The size of the platform matters. Okay.
Number of platforms.
Because we're spotting a unit. Okay. We're not necessarily spotting every platform in the unit.
Yeah, I felt that the hard way, Jan, in our multiplayer. We'll talk about that because never mind. We'll talk about that one later.
And it doesn't even mean you could possibly shoot at them just because you spot them. That's the other thing. What it means is that I know there's somebody over in that wood line. I saw somebody move into it. I don't see them now, but I know the unit's there. Now that's sufficient to fire artillery at them. It's not sufficient to lay a gun sight on somebody and ping them.
Okay. The other thing wanted to show here is,
and the other thing about range is, especially, you got lots of different kinds of sensors, from eyeballs to, ground surveillance radars to, magnified optics and thermals and night vision and all that kind of stuff. Every one of those sensors has got 3 different ranges. One is like, can I even tell there's a target there? That's the detection range. The next is the classification. Well, is it a tank? Is it a truck? Is it a APC class kind of thing, light armor? Is it troops? And that's all you might know, is that I can get a general idea of what kind of unit it is.
And that would be available through the unit overlay range rings. Or...
Yeah, if you look at the range rings on there, right? The outer one is detect, and then you got classify, and then the identify. Now you got make and model.
Yeah.
On the platforms that you can see.
Right.
Now,
there's a couple things on this unit that you've got selected in particular. It is a recon unit. That orange dot indicates that it's got an active ground search radar on.
Yes.
So you can look at the emitter overlay and see where the emitter can try to detect targets.
I did have a question about that. What is the most efficient way to get to that emitter information?
If you go to unit overlay, if you want to see what it looks like, there's emitters.
There you go.
So now you can see what your radar, the hexes the radar can detect into.
If I wanted to turn what is the easiest way to turn that on and off? I thought
right click and there's an emitter.
Right click the unit and there's an emitter.
That's good. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Now while you're on that, you know about the shift click to kind of like figure out where you want to go to see.
There we go.
Yeah. Right. So like, where do I put that ground surveillance radar? To accomplish whatever task I want to give it.
That's beautiful.
So if you go into the hex that's clicked on, that is what the radar will see.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
The lay of the land is crucial in a tactical war game, so you really need to spend a little time shift clicking around. To make sure you've covered the ground you think you've covered.
Yeah, especially for the Warsaw Pact forces, right?
Hey, there's William.
Yeah.
So speaking of, so we've gotten into the we've gotten pretty detailed into the unit level, but let me step back just a little bit and kind of show what other terrain level. Let's see if we can turn this off for now.
You can go look at the Maku.
The Maku. Oh, is that this is the Maryland Maku?
Yeah, that's
all right.
That's a reference that people aren't going to get, but that's pretty good.
I'm showing my age.
Yeah, I was about to say Billy Davis Jr. Right?
Yeah, for me, it's cool, McCool.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is just a quick tool.
Yeah, this is where I go to. This is my go-to. I would think that most users probably go to this first just to get a good idea, and then say, hey, this is an interesting area that I might want to do something with, and you probably might go a little bit more detail into some of these other ones.
Yep, shows you those clear lanes of fire, shows you the restricted terrain, shows you the water obstacles in the road network. You can kind of see good places to go, bad places to go, good places to hide. Also, where can the enemy hide and have good lines of fire?
Yep. If
I want to do any kind of prep work.
Yeah, I tend to always start here, and then I just basically kind of go down. We were saying, but the shift clicking I need to do a little bit more of, honestly. So, and again I think pretty much
turn it off.
If you click on somebody, let me turn this off. Pretty much if you click on somebody, I always I'm gonna try to start doing a little bit more of this. If you work your way. Now that I think about it, it's actually organized very well, by the way, as far as, check this, check this, check this. That's beautiful.
Well, and even and the multi-unit one too is a little useful here too, because you can see what everybody can see from line of sight. And the active unit, if you click on them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
It didn't actually kick in, did it?
Well, he's not. You had to have a group selected. Right.
Initially, go ahead and cycle that. There you go. I think that acted weird.
Hold on. So all I want to say, what is it? Okay, explain to me what I'm seeing here then.
Okay, I don't know that it actually kicked on properly. That was what I was seeing.
Let me just make sure I don't have anything else. Maybe it's a combination of things. Let me just turn off.
Go ahead and turn it off and on again, because I think being off a unit is what caused it to have a bit of an issue. I guess we're okay. So what the all LOS thing will show what everybody sees, and then if you kind of click on a unit, the border of what it can see highlights.
Mhm.
Okay, it's just faint on your screen. That's why I can't
Oh,
see it.
here. Let me see if I can maybe getting into it a little bit closer might
But
help. a
that's
little bit.
okay.
See, yeah. So, I like that. I did not know that. So you're saying do the all line of sight. That's interesting. Okay, I have not used that very well.
Because that gives you a feel for what everybody can see out of the gate. And if you click on the unit, you get that hard border of what that specific unit is seeing
Perfect.
from that location.
That's great.
The numbers, it's not an all or nothing thing. Those little white
Right.
numbers tell you how much the quality of your visibility into that hex. So the top most outline one is a 12.
Mhm.
Well, notionally, you can see like 12% of what's going on in there. So that's a very weak contact.
Mhm.
Other ones that are in the 80s and 90s, great. You know, you clearly see everything in them.
Right. So as you're
so-
moving, you want to just as you're
Yeah.
moving that and positioning that, you want
Yeah.
to see the numbers grow with where you're interested, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Very good. I think we've covered a lot of the. Let's see. I'm just trying to think of anything else here. That's. This is. Oh wait a minute. No, I haven't. What is this? What is this showing me? I've not used.
That's
this
showing
yet.
you back there from, I don't know if that's is that a ZSU?
It's a Shilka at the very north edge of the map.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is what it can cover for air defense fires
Against helicopters.
against helicopters.
And this is the best defense here. Is that what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah.
You're getting a couple different things. You're seeing his kind of in red there because he's the active
Mhm.
unit. And then there's some hatched versions of things there, vertical and some crosshatch, which are some of your other units have limited air defense capability. That would be, heavy machine guns, maybe off of tanks. Could be the if there's BMPs or BTRs.
Oh, you
have an
got
auto cannon.
you got that MRC that you just clicked. That I think
it might have.
that's got man pads in it.
This one, right? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that one there.
Yeah, it's got Strelas. Yep.
Very good. This is one I had not used much of. And is this going to be? What is the main difference between that?
Well, the main difference is helicopters fly low to the ground, so there's
Right.
terrain masking.
Right.
Aircraft, if they show up in that area, are being
It's
slightly higher.
just based on their altitude.
Right,
Perfect.
line of sight and altitude.
Okay,
Yep.
that makes sense. Okay. And let's turn that off. Let's just take a look at fire support coverage. I don't think there's much in this.
Well, you don't have any active fire support elements yet.
Yeah.
The first ones come in at like 10 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
I guess let's maybe take a look at the SOP manager, because that's probably what you're gonna do once you've taken a glance at the terrain and stuff and where you want to approach. That's what you want to hit next.
All right, so again, I double-clicked here to get to this unit. Before we get to that, just kind of showing you a few things here.
Yep, that's the unit dashboard, and it shows you your orders, your subunits, tells you what each of those subunits is carrying, shows you the ammunition for them. What you'll notice in fights, in Red Storm, ammo kind of depleted for the whole group. Here you'll notice after a firefight that different rounds have been fired at different rates, because again, it's a per weapon per unit deal.
And not everybody will shoot every time the unit shoots.
Not everybody will shoot. That's right.
There's also what staff indicates any alerts too, right?
Yep, alerts, claims if there's issues like they're low on morale or ammo, and then the particular unit log, which is kind of a more concise version of that log you showed earlier.
Yeah, everything
only for this unit.
That's perfect. And then what Jan was pointing out is
if you go down to edit the SOP. Yep.
This is where I need to explore more. What are the common things that folks change? I mean, probably your discipline more than. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just trying to approach this from a what should you learn first kind of perspective. More than likely, you're changing.
The mistake I make, and Charles always corrects me, is you really want to go in and set this first to what you're going to do before you issue orders, because The scope is it'll set it for any follow-on order. Now, if you issue orders, you can go in and change each waypoint's SOP.
Yeah.
But that can get a little tedious if you make that mistake of not doing it first. So if you were planning on this guy going down the Autobahn and engaging targets,
Right.
you know, you may want to set his fire discipline out to max.
Right.
You know, standoff range is another criticality. How close do you want him to get to an enemy unit, you know, before he stops or tries to maneuver? Relocation, you know, if he takes direct fire losses, maybe never. If you really need to push this guy forward, you know, you just keep driving till you're done.
But 0, when I'm using the default being 0, what is so?
That means that you'll run right up on top of somebody.
Okay, which is probably what we need to do at this. If we're
another important one is that movement. Are you going to stay concealed? Are you going to go on roads? You know, and it's a trade-off. Do you want cover? Do you want speed of movement? Avoiding NBC. Are you going to run through, you know, gas or radiation? Or are you going to avoid what you can? That's again what you can see. That doesn't help you, you know, if you don't spot it or if recon hasn't, you know, flagged it first.
And that's
minefield contact.
That's also true for the standoff range, right? So they will only continue sort of to evade the contact if they have line of sight, or?
Right. Yeah, you've got to see something for these things to kick in. You know, if you have your standoff range set to, you know, 6 and you run into somebody at 2 because they popped out of the woodwork on you or shot or moved, your unit may, especially with the new upcoming update, try to pull back and withdraw to maintain that. That's coming, I think, with the next update, and guys can yell at me on that one. So a little bit better logic.
I'd point out in this particular mission, since you're doing kind of like for the Warsaw Pact, you would call it an attack from the march, because you don't know where your enemy is. You have to find them, and so that means you're going to be you're going to want different SOP settings for different subordinate units based on their task and their responsibility as you move to make contact. So like the very lead unit, whatever it is, right? And I'm not going to count the recon guys, right? I'm talking about your maneuver elements, right? You want to make contact with the, you know, like one of your subordinates. You don't want your main body to bump into everybody, and you don't necessarily want to attack the first thing you see. And when I say attack, I mean like go drive on top of it and crush them. You may want to bypass them. You may want to stop where you're at so that and lock that element, that enemy unit, in place so it cannot maneuver while you maneuver your other guys. Right. So it's tempting to go, well, the best thing to do is to like go to the headquarters of a formation and then set the scope for this unit and all subordinates for future orders. And then you set the SOP once for this battalion, right? Great. Now I can start giving orders, except that you probably don't want, you know, it's probably not the best thing to do in this kind of situation. Now, if you have a battalion that's doing a defense, then, you know, yeah, that could very well be that, you know, everybody has the same SOP. You have to pay attention to what kind of mission you're trying to do. And that's going to drive SOPs down to individual unit settings may be different.
Does changing this in any way affect the readiness and or the control, the command cycle?
No.
Okay. All right.
Well, not directly.
Not directly. I mean, you know, the results of setting this do, of course. But I mean, just toggling this stuff around doesn't change the readiness or the command cycle. One of the things that you need to think about is that this is controlling unit behavior. All right, you're not really giving orders. You're giving guidance to the unit on how to behave in certain situations.
If I could just jump into you don't need to mess with this to get started with the game. We try to provide reasonable defaults, and you could play for quite some time and never actually dip into this. It goes back to our mandate: make it accessible, make it easy to get started.
If you are interested,
if you want to set up the perfect ambush position, then there are a lot of changes you would want to make here. But that comes with time. You know, that's mastery of the game later on. Easy to learn, hard to master, and if you're going to the master stage, you will spend a lot of time in here, and there are almost unlimited possibilities given all the combinations of things. And a tactically astute person would find a lot to like about this screen, but it's not
question
required.
Is there like a difficulty setting that allows the AI to adjust this or no? Or will the AI just use the default that you've come up with, which is pretty much, the best you can do?
It uses the national defaults, and no, I don't think the difficulty settings touch that at all.
Okay. All right.
They have more to do with fog of war than with behavior.
All right.
I would say.
What I'm getting at there is like if two people that are very new to the game are playing multiplayer or wanting to get into it, and they don't want to they don't want to step into this. They want the AI to take control of this at that command level. Are you really commanding stances at the individual unit level? So if somebody didn't want, that was my main question. Is if somebody didn't want to step into this, is there an option to let the AI do it? But
when you say let the AI do it, no, there's like Rob said, there's national defaults.
Okay.
And the AI is not going to modify the settings here.
Okay.
It will work within them, but not modify.
Yeah. It's not going to do something absolutely wrong, but cool.
Or better.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Because that's it. That's actually why I haven't stepped too heavily into here, because I feel like I don't understand necessarily each one of these enough that if I change it and then forget, that's another thing, is forgetting that you've set something some way. So I'm thinking,
you need to have a 305 card with your checklist as you're doing your order.
There you go.
You do. I mean, it's helpful.
Yeah.
Because even somebody who's played this for years, as we've developed it, I forget to do it. Oh crap! I forgot to go check that guy's.
Why did he just run away? Oh, wait a minute! I have it set to 6.
Yep.
So, note to self: check it.
But that's a friction point in real world. That's a friction point.
Yeah. The one thing we didn't, I might get into a little bit more of the staff because we didn't really go too much into that. We are approaching the hour mark, so I didn't want to keep you too long. But, you know what? Let's just get these guys moving and see if we run into anything just for giggles. And no, I'm not going to do anything very particularly useful or strategic here. Just get these guys going down.
Going down in flames.
Yes, exactly. Let's see if we can get some contact going, and we'll just kind of. I just want to show how what happened there. And again, the different changes, the stances upon completion of.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on like the difference between hold and screen. What you want to think about is screen means it's a temporary halt, because the transition from screen to movement versus hold to movement is huge, right? It takes a long time to get going again out of a hold stance. And that's because when you do a hold, you're deploying everybody out. You're doing, here's your sector of fire, and you're checking this and that and the other thing. And so it's a big transition.
Is that, am I remembering right that there is a stance bubble or equivalent, like so in other words, I don't need to click in to know what they're like if I go and get into a hold, it's very here, let's just see what happens.
You can see that in the unit dashboard for the waypoints, if you mean that.
Yes. So like
the current posture is shown as the bottom right letter of the counter, so H for hold and S for screen and M for move. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was referring to. So good. Thank you for that.
And I might point out, a lot of the dialogues that are getting in your way have a little 2 triangle upper right title bar icon. If you click on that, it collapses them.
One thing I noticed.
One
thing I noticed, and I don't know if I'm. One thing I noticed is if I and sorry to point out bugs, but one thing I noticed is if I do this. And then I do. Oh no, it's not. Oh, it must have been fixed in the update. But I noticed that if you minimize these and then you re-maximize them, then it would cut off at the bottom. and but it doesn't seem to be happening. I'm thinking that you may have fixed that in the update, which I just applied today, by the way. Sorry. Yeah. So that's not
Could I suggest something else? Under Info View, the Info View menu item down towards the bottom, the second from the bottom, Show and Use Core Info. Select that. So that just shrank down the map and open up a space on the right for your floating panels to sit without obscuring the map. And that makes it a whole lot easier.
Zoom your map out.
Does that also
once you get down far enough, then you'll have a blank. There you go. So now,
very good. I was having problems with that because these would stay over it and the map would not make itself visible. It would it was sensing that like artillery was dropping here or something, and I couldn't see where it was, so I had to. Thank you very much for showing me that. Right. See, I'm the perfect interviewer because I'm an idiot.
It took us 5 years to refine it, but yeah, we did spend 5 years refining it.
So that's good.
I'll often play with the map zoomed at like 60% or lower zoom.
Well, let's while we're on this little subject, if you go to options, there's a couple nice options that you could probably use here as well. You can show NATO counters. If you zoom the map way out, go to its extents, you can go to large NATO in options, and it just shows you, and so you can actually, they're readable. And then the other thing in there under options, there's a couple other things, is you can set the calendar color scheme. So if you want, right now you're in default, but like if you went automatic light color fill for NATO, the nice thing when you color is by units. Now you can see their color. Your blue is your recon. That helps you maintain your forces a little easier. There's also a setting for the map contrast level. You can mute the map colors to make them more or less vibrant. Right now you're moderate, so that helps makes the counters pop a little more. So a lot of cool little things there, and some new ones coming in the update that'll be coming out here in a week or so. Some more toys to play with.
One thing I noticed is, and it's probably a user preference. I'm assuming there's a user preference for the mouse wheel, because my mouse wheel does not zoom out. Hold on. See, for some reason my mouse does not behave. I'll show that later. It's fine. But like I'm doing mouse wheel right now. Oh, there it goes right now. Never mind. Oh, it's opposite.
Fixed.
But I don't know if it's my mouse or something, but like I'm doing it right. Oh, now it's doing it. It's just not. I don't know what it was.
Maybe your computer is a little bit processing there.
Yeah, I think so. Something threw me off from that. But
you need to click on the map immediately before scrolling the wheel. If you'd clicked on something else, possibly I'm
scrolling it right now, and it's not doing it. Yeah. So I don't know. That's on my end. So.
Okay. But now you can go back to your silhouettes now. Just shut those NATO ones off.
I do like that. I do like that aspect of it, because then I wouldn't want to have to cycle. So I like how and that's how everything is in the game too, which you're kind of you're applying something and then you're unapplying it. So I like that instead of having to cycle through it. If that makes sense. All right, let's just let us just kind of. I didn't do any good orders there, but let's just kind of watch it go through now. Oh, lovely.
Wow, that was nice.
I do like.
That's a hello kind of scenario. Walked right into him.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. So this guy's gonna be in trouble here in a little bit.
Yeah, interesting situation with the cavalry scouts there. Wow.
Yeah. Good lesson for not running your radar down the street early.
Right. I'm assuming I'm seeing these because of this unit. And is there like a really quick and dirty way to know why you're seeing something? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, not really.
If you hover over the unit, then it says spotted by radar or whatever.
And now nobody, because Tank just killed him.
Because the recon is sitting and drinking tea or whatever.
Waiting for SNR. There's something very cathartic about playing this game because you're just kind of like a commander waiting for results. You know what I'm saying? Especially in a multiplayer game, it's very nerve-wracking. You're like, what the hell did he do? And then
A lot of Tank and a lot of ATG on the
just to show people that the time is progressing here on the marker. Oh, very good.
There's some reinforcements.
Looks like I still have the color. I do like that. I might keep that color coding on. I like that.
Yeah, the colors are nice, and then if you add the halo, it really makes for a nice looking counter.
Oh, one thing, kind of a wish list item. I like how when you're playing multiplayer, you get that almost VCR action, and it knows to play back. Is there anything on the roadmap to include recording of the entire multiplayer match for playback?
Well, I'm the guardian of the wish list. Yes, that is on it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It requires a substantial rewrite because if you do that, there's some other features you want to do, and then you get scope creep, and then 3 other guys say, well, now that you've done that, you could really do it better with this. But yes,
even if
be
it
able to
was
select cards, be able to drop bookmarks. I want to return to this, all that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That is good to know.
It won't be tomorrow.
Yeah, no. Whatever. Well, what do you see as a simpler version of that? One thing that Jan and I discussed was the potential of a game potentially getting either missing or corrupted on the DBM plus server. Is that? I mean, I'm assuming you're backing up the multiplayer games occasionally, or how is that processed?
Oh, that would be mine again.
Okay.
I've just been working on that like a lunatic for the last 3 days. Thank you very much. It's extremely hard to test, but if there's the slightest glitch, then yes, things will go off the rails. And what I've been doing for 3 days is to have more backups and make a more robust recovery.
Okay.
And I think you'll be delighted at the new recovery screen you see that gives you a step-by-step on how to find and re-upload the turn again. And so I don't think I can fix whatever it is with the web services glitching out at the time, but I can absolutely have a recovery file all set for you to re-upload when you come back in an hour and everything's working again.
Perfect. Great. And is that going to be like, that's great.
And that will be in the public beta coming out this coming week.
Ooh, speaking of public beta, how do we get involved in that at this stage? How do we obtain
the public beta means it's going to be released by Matrix as a public beta.
Okay.
So everybody can have it. We're just not saying it's finished.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. And I mean, where is that in the forum? Is it accessible? Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Everybody can get it.
Perfect. I just didn't know if you had to like submit.
And then within a week, assuming there are no major problems, we'll just affirm that as the actual update.
All right, so let's see what we see at this point.
I got a question concerning the reinforcements. Is there any way to sort of give them orders before they arrive? Because sometimes you have the situation that, let's say, you have a 40-minute command cycle and they arrive on minute 2, and then they are basically sitting there for 38 minutes being shelled by enemy artillery, and you can do nothing about it.
Yeah, that's a backlog issue with us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the list of things we want to fix, and we've had some discussions about the possibility of how to make that a little better. To your point, You know, even just having a dialogue that comes up before they show up, where you can say, "Okay, here's an initial order. Here's what I want you to do,"
Yeah.
or you know, do I want you to come on now?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because that's another point to that.
I
So
mean, you know, there's different models where, you know, another model is, well, you give initial orders to everybody, including you know, your reinforcements at the beginning of the game, and then, you know, prior, you know, at every order cycle, you can change that, and then, okay, they got orders delay, which then pushes their arrival time back.
Ah,
Right.
interesting.
You know, so there's lots of different things that way. Now, you know, one of the gamey things that is difficult to deal with is if you've played this scenario a few times, you know where the reinforcements are coming in at.
Yeah.
So, you know, part and parcel of that, at least from my viewpoint, is we need a way to fuzz that and give that at least some influence capability to the owning commander to vary arrival time and location, you know, with appropriate cost of doing that.
Yeah. Very cool.
I think the one thing I wanted to show was a little bit more of this, because I don't think we went into this at the beginning. Just we'll kind of make this short and sweet. But
there's some good stuff here.
There's a
Yeah,
lot.
now that you've done a turn, you've got some interesting information in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect. I love this, by the way, and I don't know if this always was there, but the ability to print this and just print it I use it to print to PDF before my game, and I print all these out and just kind of you know, keep them and show other people.
Have you made your own overlays yet, Peter?
No, and we were talking about that before, and I don't want to. I couldn't figure it out. Now, honestly, I didn't read I didn't read the manual, so so I tried to do it without reading the manual, and I couldn't figure it out. If you want to, we can offline this if you want, but
sure.
Sure.
Well, explain the functionality.
Basically, you're going to do an export of the game map, and
right.
It gets exported as a grayscale, right?
Okay.
And then you put it in an image editor of some kind, and you draw all your graphics on there that you want,
right.
And then you're going to re-import that back in, and then you can toggle it off and on, and it puts it on the game map. Now, the key is when you're doing your image editing, you need to stay away from grays, because that's how we set transparency for your overlay, and turn that grayscale map into a clear piece of acetate that would be slapped on top of a physical map.
Right. No matter what I was doing, it was just saying that the file format was not an appropriate format. I don't know if I was saving it wrong, or maybe it was defaulting in what I was using as a different type than it was capable.
That could be.
When I do it, I clipboard it between the game and paint.net.
Okay.
And then clipboard it back in, import from clipboard.
Okay.
I think that's what I do. I have done that way.
Microsoft Paint doesn't always work. CorelDRAW doesn't always work. These are just Windows services talking to each other and not agreeing.
Right.
Yeah, we're kind of stuck. We can stuff the clipboard with that image, but it's a particular variation of the image that not everybody else can do. But Paint.net does.
Okay, Paint.net. Okay. All right. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, I'll try it. And this is updated. That's the beauty of this, is that, you know, with each turn, this is updated with information. So if you're trying to do
that, actually is live during turn resolution.
Yep.
So if you have two monitors and drag that over, it will update as the game plays live for you.
And I believe the one on the Intel screen will too.
Let's see, situation wrap. So this is just an approximation of this. A very good, full, detailed list of and yeah, I like this for this. I think you can get at this through personnel, and like you can get through the reinforcement. This is where I tend to go more for. This is great for understanding it at the beginning, but when I want to look at reinforcements, I go here, which this is beautiful right here, by the way. So this kind of tells you exactly who they are. And then what's really cool, and I just found this out, you know, if you click on it, it will highlight that. There you go. Perfect. See? that's brilliant. So that helps a lot. You know, obviously this is a common functionality in games, but it's just the way it's laid out, and the fact that it gives you all the information about it too at the same time is beautiful. Back where we were, I'm trying to think of anything else that let's look at.
Now the intel screen, yeah, because that will give you basically that enemy sit rep is the one we're talking about. And now you get an estimation and what you saw of the enemy and where there's currently located. And if you scroll down, you get a list of kind of a lost, well, first what's on the map and what you think they are. And if you scroll down further, you can see these last spotting contacts. So, because you saw a lot of stuff before your guys died.
This is good. I didn't know about this one.
Yeah, and that tells you kind of what was spotted and how. A lot of radar. You see a lot of radar cuts from your unit before he ate
this
some
is very
120.
good information, because otherwise you'd have to kind of either know the unit that, you know what I'm saying, and the unit's probably not there anymore, or you'd have to dig through the log, right? So that's beautiful. Let's see some other things. Of course, kill list.
Yep.
Spotted
nothing off map.
What I like that you basically paralleled this, right, with the staff information.
Yeah, that listing right there is also the buttons there on the right for the in the command tab.
Yes.
So you can get to it one of two different ways. I think your command tab's right there.
Here. Oop. I don't know if it didn't. Maybe
Oh, you may have to stretch it. I wonder if it got. Go ahead and click the button again, and then drag the bottom of it.
Nah, it's not.
That's interesting.
Just hand it to me. I'll break it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, show and hide core panels. That might reset things.
Yeah. F5.
There you go. No, that thing.
That command is still.
Well, I'll see if I can duplicate that. Maybe it might even be the pack that's in this core panel. Let's see if that. No. So leave it to me to break it. No, that's okay. Vaps, whatever. But how do I? Of course. Can I dismiss it? Let me just turn off. Well, we did that, didn't we? Let's turn off some of that. Maybe it's the. Might have been. This might be interfering with it in some weird way. Oop, that might have done it. No. Well, somehow I got the game into a state where that will not open. But that's fine. Let's move on. That's when we pull out the magician's hat and we go somewhere else. All right. Fire support. We didn't really get too much. Now we got some stuff. Maybe explain FSCC, and that is an option, right? That to allow it or not, correct?
Right, and that's basically having your AI staff handle all the fire mission requests and allocate units to it. So if you click the fire missions tab, right now nobody's scheduled anything.
No, but this is the queue.
There are some requests, so those could find their way into the queue then to turn into fire missions here in the next turn.
So, and that's pretty much handled by priority. The AI kind of okay. All right.
Yeah, and you can take them over and do them yourself. So if you click that, it goes off, and then if you go to your multi-unit overlay again, you can show that fire support coverage, which now will light up the map and show you everything that can be hit.
It's probably the entire map mostly because there's
there's a lot of deep circles there.
Yeah, there it is. Right
but if you had various ranges or off map assets, you would see the ring and see where they are.
Right. And I just wanted to see what happens when it. That's it. Okay, that's what I was looking for. I just didn't know the easy way to turn that on and off. And
also, you can click the menu button underneath the counter.
Here we go. All right, so then.
And there's a checkbox down there in and out of
okay,
in and out of FSCC control. One of the things to keep in mind about using FSCC is that you'll get a larger quantity of fires, because missions, especially when your command cycle gets big, missions will go into the queue, they'll be allocated and fired in between your orders phases. All right, so if you want to micromanage your artillery, you're more than welcome to, probably to your detriment.
Right, I agree. Of course, there's,
and so it's kind of like you say, well, okay, you know what? I don't want I have an attack coming up. I have an assault coming up, and I need to have ammo.
Right.
And so like you take one unit out, and then that way it's not going to shoot on the way to the objective, and it's got a full basic load to support the assault on your target.
I think more often than not, I'd probably take the more localized mortars and so forth, probably under local control.
There's that, possibly rocket units, because they fire a salvo and then have to reload, and potentially air assets if you have them. You may want to take those off so that AI doesn't fly them into a hostile area.
Now, Peter, have you investigated the direct support mechanism at all?
I think I've accidentally, yes. Where how do we get to that?
You got to go to the unit and go to the SOP for the firing unit.
Okay. Any type?
No, right. I mean our indirect fire.
All right. So where was that bad boy?
You were sitting on the mortar. He's active right now.
Yep. Right there.
Yeah. So go into his dashboard, and then edit SOP. Okay.
Yeah, and then
under combat, there's provide direct support to all requested units.
So what that does is it limits the scope of missions that unit will fire according to the organizational structure. Okay, and so like the most responsive is, an indirect fire unit that is directly subordinate to the requesting unit. And the next best is both of them report to the same immediate headquarters. So there's a fire chain. There's a chain where the request has to filter up and to whatever appropriate headquarters, and then it has to go over and then filter down through the chain of command on the fire support side. All right.
So if I do specified, So if I do specified,
then you click a unit, and it's that unit and all of its subordinates.
Let's just take.
And so if you don't want your mortars firing missions for another battalion, right, then you want to put it in direct support of its owning battalion headquarters, for example.
Very good. And so for any reason I wanted to transfer to only do it for this one, I would let's try that again. Let's see if I pick that head. That didn't work.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Sorry, my eyes are playing tricks. All
right. Now you get two benefits from that. One is that you restrict the missions it'll fire, so it's only firing it in a sector that you want it to fire in, and it also shortens the time to fire the mission. It reduces the delay.
And this is affecting the FCCC.
Yeah, it'll affect the FSCC.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Very good.
Yeah, and especially if you're playing sort of larger scenarios like we are doing currently, that is, I think, an important aspect of the game, to think ahead and look at what sort of amount and range of artillery do you have available, where do you want to use that, and then assign it to the battle groups.
And what portions of the battlefield do you want to mass your fires on? How do you do that? How do you get the FSCC to do that? All right, and this is the way to do it.
Perfect. Thank you for showing me that. I think that's about it as far as I wanted to show. Anything any of you want me to point out at all before we wrap up? I think we did a pretty darn good overview all around.
Let me look at my notes here real quick.
I'm going to stop my screen for a moment and just kind of let us chat. So where are things going? Let's just talk maybe a little bit about where things are headed in the near future, in the far future, and the alternate future?
Yeah, more and better of the same, I would say. I was sitting down once we finally got the game out and assembled our wish list, and there are 42 major topics. I don't want to talk in specifics about it, but something we're very keen to do is round out much more of the Cold War in along the inter-German border. So there'll be a Central Storm, a Fulda Gap, a Northern Plains. We're really interested in trying some of the potential Norwegian campaign. And we would go south as well. It depends on kind of who steps forward with some knowledge about these things to help us with the nitty-gritty details. But we have already a large and enthusiastic contributor team. Poor Jim is tasked with keeping them going, and it's a big deal. It takes a lot of hours from a lot of people to pull together more content, but more content is the way we want to go. That's Cold War. What we would as well like to do is move into the modern era, and so it's a whole new set of data things. But our team is really energized, with drones and all kinds of things.
Yeah. You're watching.
That we would love to do. The Cold War era kind of ended with the dawn of the digital age. And I know we've got some digital tools, but this game's set in 1989, and the personal computer that changed everything was really 1990, 91. And we deliberately stayed this side of that dividing line. Now we want to cross it and really get into some of the interesting techniques, which change everything. And so we're assembling people for that as well. There's a huge data research issue. That alone is daunting, but hey, it's fun for us too. And I expect several issues of Cold War stuff, and then the start of the modern era stuff.
So it sounds like you're expanding with expertise, but is the group expanding in general? Is the company growing as well? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, the days of it being a hobby on evenings and weekend are kind of well behind us now.
Right.
That was the fun time, the fun era. But yes, we're committing to it because the demand seems to be there, and the more we do, the more curious we become about the other possibilities. And
I think this title in particular, it has general appeal. It has mainstream appeal. I think personally, I think if this can be put in front of the mainstream, even the RTS players, I think, and I think that's probably word of mouth more than anything, and articles and getting it out, and that hopefully we can kind of help with that. But I think it goes beyond the wargaming camp. I feel like there is a good general appeal of this game in particular. It's easy to jump into, and as you showed throughout, it's not difficult to master. It just takes time to find out where things affect the results in a positive way. But I like the fact that you can, as you said before, jump into it and generally do well or okay, right? And you learn how to do better by being annihilated, of course, right? in a safe and friendly manner.
Yeah, a safe to fail environment.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Bigger scenarios, you bet.
Yeah.
My personal preference is for smaller ones, and that's mainly because there's so much detail for every single counter on the map, and you saw some of the screens and reports, that the cognitive load gets excessive if you have a huge number of counters all super detailed. But some guys can pull that off, and including people on our team. And so, yes, we're actually developing actively some larger scenarios. The game engine itself struggles once you get up to divisional. Putting an entire Soviet division on the map is a big deal. But if somebody can handle the cognitive load of doing that, then yeah, we can program it. The game will do it.
So one thing we didn't get into too deeply is the campaign, right? And I've only traipsed into it slightly. When somebody is looking for a bigger scenario, really, just operationally, it has a scope. That the game has a certain scope, but how much are you thinking about? How much capability is there to know what's going on around you, and maybe potentially have a dynamic campaign? Like, how much is dynamic in the campaign, and how much could be dynamic in the campaign?
Well, I think what you're talking about is, say like within a core sector,
right.
What are the outcomes of the other things in the core? How does that impact the campaign?
Right.
And that's a big lift. I mean, like, we haven't even thought about doing something like that. The baby step is, what about things that are just outside the map?
Right.
All right. When you run along the edge of the map, right now it's kind of a free pass. There's nobody shooting at you from off map. Yeah, we'll put some indirect fire assets off map, and that just really what it means is that it's harder for you to do counterfires against them, and they can't reach maybe the entire map. So that kind of makes things interesting. I'm working now on redoing airstrikes, because right now they're Red Storm airstrikes are very simplistic. So how do you do standoff weapon releases? And when you do a seed, those things are off map. They're like 90, 150 kilometers away. So what does that mean? Right.
Right. What does it mean?
Even for the close-in airstrikes, there's multiple munition releases. So what does that mean to air defense? And where are the release points? And all those kinds of things. And so it's going to make it a lot. And I think, when we do this work, it's going to be really great, because it's going to add more drama and immersion to when that happens.
Yeah, that's what I think I'm looking for, is just an immersion ring, if you will.
The biggest thing that we strive to do with the current campaign mechanism is the whole notion of, the thing about a war game is that you have to live with the consequences of your decisions. All right. And so when you play a campaign, if you think that you won, when you've got 30% of your, you've got 35% of your force left, and then you reduce the other guy to 28%, and you've got the victory point locations. If you think that's success, it is until you get to the next mission, where you haven't recovered back to 100%, and you're facing somebody who's at 100%. And
resource management.
Yeah.
That's what wargamers love, right? And it's an exercise in resource management, because you can defeat yourself by running your forces too flat, and just going, playing to the bitter end of each scenario,
hunting down the last squad.
Yep. And then the transition time, well, you only get so many fallen out tanks back again, and your guys really didn't have much time to recover their rest and morale, because they were just motoring to the next battlefield. And guess what? You start in a really awful position. You are not going to get killed. So the campaigns are don't go for glory necessarily. Think about the big picture, and that creates another host of dilemmas. Make it interesting and replayable, and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. And talking about that readiness recovery, one of the things that players are blessed with the current content is short battles, right? 6, 8, even 12 hours, you can have everybody wide awake the entire time, right? And yeah, they'll get fatigued, but you don't have to worry about trying to rest people, and so the scenarios really, they pick up at like just a moment before contact, not the previous 24 to 48 hours of hunting down, reconnaissance, and all that kind of stuff, and keeping your people rested, and at the same time alert. So that's a thing, and we don't do it at this point. Our content developers don't do it, and the game engine won't support more than 24 hours, and we limit it to, I think, 18 hours. And there's lots of other friction points that would be nice to put in, like some degree of logistics.
We allow unlimited ammo, and that's totally unrealistic. We need to scale that back. One of the 42 items is having an ammo allowance for the entire campaign, and you then have to draw it down voluntarily and say, well, for this battle, I think I'm going to need this much 155 ammo. Nice. And that's what you got.
Nice.
And if you're high, you've wasted it. If you're low, you're in deep trouble. And so again, there's a tension that rewards replayability and all those things.
So one of my final questions will be just how can we help as a community? Like, where have you found the most help from the community, and how can we continue that?
In Red Storm, if I may, we had a host of user suggestions for feedback, and we incorporated all the ones we could, probably hundreds, in the low hundreds of improvements and suggestions. We can't do them all, obviously, but we ended up calling the final edition the Players Edition because the players had so much of a positive impact on it. And we're very much open to that again. Again, we can't do everything. We can't create a whole new game to do some new thing. But when you're portraying relatively modern combat, you will get a lot of guys saying, I commanded a tank in that unit there, or I was part of the headquarters company. And we did things this way, not that way that you show. And, oh, okay, great. We had engineers explaining things and artillerists explaining fast cam and things to us. And so where we had designed for effect to start with, we're able to actually model it much better with the benefit of their feedback. And so the community is absolutely, we love to engage with the community that way. And if people have fun making content for it, you start by making battle plans or scenarios.
Awesome. Yeah,
talk to us. If you know the Norwegian order of battle for 1989, we want to hear from you.
Well, I think we'll wrap up there. I do want to thank you all for joining into this and the audience. We've had several people stay the whole time, it looked like. So I appreciate everybody watching and taking part. And thank you very much for going through what is already an awesome game, and I think can only get better with suggestions, as we said, and time for roadmap, of course. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you both too. I really enjoyed it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.